形意拳练的是技，不是动作。
Shing I Chuan is distinguished by aggressive, seemingly direct movements and explosive power, primarily applied at close range. Practitioners of Xing Yi employ coordinated actions to generate bursts of power designed to overwhelm their opponent, attacking and defending simultaneously. The methods vary from school to school, but always encompass unarmed combat, based mainly on individual or linked techniques, and sometimes on forms, and weapons handling that utilizes body mechanics similar to those of intense hand-to-hand combat. Movement and footwork in this art are deeply influenced by training with staffs and spears. Among the martial arts historically and technically related to Xing Yi are Dai-style Xinyi Yiquan, Xingyiquan, and Yiquan. Xingyiquan. The earliest written records of Xingyi date back to the 18th century and are attributed to Ma Xueli of Hunan Province and Ji Longfeng of Shaanxi Province. Popular tradition credits the renowned General Yu Fei of the Song Dynasty, 960-1279 CE, with creating Xingyi, although this claim is disputed. According to legend, during the Jin, Yuan, and Ming dynasties, very few people practiced this art, among them Ji Gong, also known as Ji Longfeng or Ji Jike, originally from Shaanxi. After Yu Fei's death, the system was supposedly lost for about 500 years. Later, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, Ji Gong is said to have found Yu Fei's boxing manual in the Zhongnan Mountains of Shaanxi Province. Certain elements of Xingyiquan, especially those related to animal styles, can be traced back to the Liang dynasty at the Shaolin Temple. Therefore, it cannot be said that Yu Fei created Xingyiquan from scratch, but rather that he gathered and refined principles already present at Shaolin, shaping them into his own style of Gong Fu, which he disseminated during his military career. Even so, he is often considered the founder of the art, both for his profound mastery of these principles, reflected in the work The 10 Theses of Xingyiquan, attributed to him, and for his status as a military hero in Chinese culture.
同时可以有调整的动作，往这儿，往这儿，这样，你一定要从这儿，往这儿踢下来，用你的手刀，但是它立的位置却不是这个手，立的位置它是肘和这个形成一个弯刀一样的这样的一个踢下来的动作。
Some Chinese martial arts practitioners and historians consider the story linking Yu Fei to Xingyiquan to be largely a product of legend. While it is possible that Xingyiquan originated from military spear techniques, there is no documentary evidence to prove Yu Fei's involvement or that the art actually dates back to the Song dynasty. These authors emphasize that the texts attributed to Yu Fei were written long after his death, some even during the Republican era, and they point out that in China it was common to attribute new works to famous or mythical figures rather than signing them with one's own name. Furthermore, historical chronicles and academic studies only record that Zhou Tong taught you the art of archery, but not spear fighting. He would have learned spear fighting from Xingyiquan, hired by Yu's paternal grandfather, Yao Dawen.
From the late Ming dynasty onward, documentation on the history of the art becomes more precise. Ji Longfeng, also called Ji Jike, is the first figure whose existence and practice of this style are generally accepted. His contributions to the art are recorded in the chronicles of the Ji clan, where Xingyiquan is described as a martial system based on the principles of spear fighting. These chronicles attribute this influence to Ji, celebrated for his exceptional skill with this weapon, to the point of being known as the Divine Spear. Currently, many consider that the style Ji Longfeng learned was Shaolin Zhenaiba, 14, a method still practiced that bears some resemblance to Xinyi Yiquan. Ji Longfeng called his system Liuha, the Six Harmonies, alluding to the most evolved spear style practiced in the later stages of the army.
Before studying the Dai family Xinyi, Li Luoneng had already mastered other martial arts. Some who maintain that his original style was Xingyiquan, possibly a family art, while others believe he actually practiced Taijiquan and Xingyiquan. Li came to train with the Dai either because he heard of their prestige in martial arts and business, or, according to another account, because he was advised to do so after fighting and losing to a practitioner of that lineage. It is generally accepted that he later settled near his home village and devoted himself to growing and selling vegetables, earning him the nickname Li Laonong, Old Farmer Li, with the nuance of respectable farmer Li. At first, the Dai clan refused to instruct him, but Li eventually gained their trust and received instruction from Dai Wenxiong, Guo Weihan, or both. After studying the Dai-style Xinyi for several years, possibly more than a decade, Li left the family's lands and traveled through the provinces of Shaanxi and Hebei, where he taught his own version of the art, which he named Xingyiquan, for many years. The reasons for the numerous changes he introduced were not recorded, although some claim that Li intended to rival the Dai clan's reputation, perhaps out of resentment. Li, along with many of his disciples and martial descendants, became famous for providing escort and caravan protection services.
开始玩，有1秒吗？没有，一样的，看，怎么样？对，传信的感觉怎么样？你试试这个手能不能打我？打不来。这个，你看网上他们都说，哎，怎么移动？不行，是吧？手不能动吧？你动不了吧？一扫了，你看这儿就，你看，是吧？对，你这又不能2个指头上，像这儿的，你看这就拿下来。对，你是你看一抓，你看，是吧？一下受不了啊！
我们可以这个手握住他的中间，这个拳头往他的头，也可以往胸口或者是肋下打，你看，但是一定贴离对方的直拳的攻击，并且这个手扶着然后再打，也可以换拳就往上打，也可以横拳或者崩拳都可以，这样去打。
During the Second Sino-Japanese War, Chinese officers at the Nanjing Military Academy were trained in a simplified version of Xingyiquan for close-quarters combat. This program included both armed techniques, such as bayonet and saber practice, and unarmed fighting methods. Sun Lutang achieved great renown in the early 20th century for his martial prowess, particularly in the Beijing and Tianjin areas, and for the treatises he wrote on internal martial arts. Throughout his life and career, he and several of his contemporaries began to group Xingyi, along with Tai Chi and Baguazhang, within the Wudong style of martial arts. Sun also shared and exchanged knowledge with his friend and colleague Fu Jinsong, who later introduced this branch of the art to southern China, after it had been practiced for centuries almost exclusively in the north. Subsequently, numerous practitioners contributed to spreading Xingyiquan throughout China and internationally. Yiquan, a derivative of Xingyiquan developed by Wang Xiangzhai, spread significantly throughout the 20th century, both within China and internationally. After the Cultural Revolution in China, certain variations of Xingyi were modified to suit the demands of modern wushu practitioners. This involved transforming different movement sequences and patterns into competition-ready routines, prioritizing aesthetics and visual appeal over actual combat effectiveness. However, this style remains relatively rare in wushu tournaments because all competitors must participate in several mandatory events, and Xingyi, not being one of them, is relegated to a secondary role within the competitive circuit. Since there was never a single organization regulating the teaching of this art, multiple styles and substyles emerged. Although there are classical texts with precise instructions and general guidelines for practice, many modern practitioners disregard them, and those who do follow them interpret them in very different ways. As a result, over the decades, the various branches of Xingyi have diversified considerably. This evolution has been accelerated both by the influence of other martial arts and by the spread of Xingyi in the Western world. Xingyiquan began to spread in the West between the 1960s and 1970s, although it did not gain real prominence within the international martial arts community until the early 21st century. Today, it remains relatively unknown to the general public. One reason for this is that, unlike other traditional Eastern martial arts, Xingyi has not featured prominently in films that have become popular in the West. Even when a modified version of Wushu appeared in the one, starring Jet Li, it was not explicitly presented to the audience as such within the film. Arguably the most widespread Xingyiquan lineage in the West today is the Yizong branch, which traces its origins to Zhang Junfeng. From the 1980s onward, many of Zhang's students and grand students, such as Kenneth Fish, Heng Aixiang, Su Dongchen, Luo Duxiu, Su Hongqi, and others, began teaching his Xingyi to Westerners, particularly in the United States. This branch became the most prominent largely because Taiwan remained open to foreigners throughout the 20th century, while for much of that period the People's Republic of China restricted regular visits. So most outsiders had little access to mainland versions of the art. Contrary to a popular belief circulated by some Taiwanese teachers, the art did not die out on the mainland. It was simply unavailable to foreigners for several decades. Another Taiwanese lineage well known in the West is that of Wang Shujin, passed on mainly through his student Wang Fulai. Several Tianjin lineages are also taught in Western countries today, especially in Canada and Israel. Dai-style Xingyi and Xingyi Liuhe lines remain rare in the West and are still relatively uncommon even in China, although they are not in danger of disappearing. In the United States, for example, Li Tailiang and a number of his students teach Dai-style Xingyi. Yiquan, on the other hand, has become extremely popular in the West and is offered in many schools, particularly across Europe. There are no reliable statistics on the number of practitioners of these arts, either in China or abroad.